Last week, Priscilla read us question 5, and Richard, you were with us for a few weeks in the beginning, and now we're nearing the end of this essay. We are in reconciliation. And Patricia, would you mind rereading question 5 and the answer to get us started?
Question 5. What then is man's great advantage towards reconciliation with God? Answer: to become weak, to become poor, to become helpless, to become nothing by the frequent exercises of the word of reconciliation in the heart. For the poor receive the gospel, and the weak receive God's strength, and the helpless His mercy, and the nothing ones His fullness.
I can start because today I was reading John chapter 13, the first verses in which he washes the disciples' feet. I don't know, are you hearing an echo?
Excuse me, would it help if John turned off or muted his device?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That might be part of the problem.
We'll give that a try. It's better. And Peter just cannot believe he's doing this because his idea of the Messiah was that this was a powerful being. And here Jesus is refusing that role again and asking us to accept the role of the weak and the powerless again. And Penington reminds us that that's our place. And yet we have to be told again and again because we want a great and powerful being who is King triumphant, and we want to be at his right hand.
I see in the answer to question 5, again, the part of the answer in question 4, where Penington says this work is wrought by exercising man and woman various ways to empty him of himself, which I can understand in terms of losing the life to gain life, losing the life in which we're encultured of our, what we might call our false self, which is so much conformed to the world and has expectations and so on. And that has to be emptied out completely. to be able to receive the new life. And it says, and make a person weak. That's very similar sort of imaging, but we have to be emptied of ourselves. I sometimes find myself praying actually to protect me, Lord, from myself, because myself is a bit of a, in terms of the false self, is a real difficulty, so that I can become both poorer inwardly and purer in heart, actually, bit by bit. An extraordinary process, which the mind that conforms to the world just can't understand it. Well, I couldn't until I got into it a bit. By having the Lord show me I didn't actually have any strength at all. What I thought was strength was just illusion.
I remember reading a play by Jean-Paul Sartre called No Exit. And the premise of the play was there were 3 people in hell confined to a particular room that they couldn't escape. And each of the people in that room was provoked by one of the other people in the room, and each was provoked by a different person, and each of them strove very hard to overcome the provocation of the one person that was irritating them, thinking that it would be a perfect situation if that person were not there. I think that was the plot of it. It's been a long time since I read it. But I think that that is an accurate depiction or a symbol of what our lives are like on a much broader scale. We have these irritations and these provocations and think that, oh, if only I could overcome them, or if only this would stop, my life would be great. But what this process is that David is referring to and is written about here is the realization that we cannot overcome the circumstances of our life, and to do so is a false assumption. And what is required is coming to grips with that fact, which is the truth. And if we love the truth more than we love our own exaltation that we can never really accomplish anyway. If we love the truth and stay with it, even though it, as Penington describes it, empties us of ourselves, to become to acknowledge and accept that situation, which is a feeling of weakness and poorness and helplessness, but it's the truth. And if we love the truth, we will come to that conclusion instead of continually butting our heads against the wall and thinking that we can overcome it. But if we love the truth, then we'll stay with that emptying of the self that will naturally happen in life. And God has mercy. And once that happens and is his judgment that it has happened, then we are lifted up. We are resurrected to new life in Christ inwardly. And that's a glorious thing. Once we receive that, then we know that all the emptying of the self is what we want, because in being emptied of the self, then we are prepared to receive Christ. And that is superior to the first birth life that we were so eager to strenuously defend. But I think it hinges upon a love of truth that must exceed love of self. And if that's there, then the process can go forward, which is a painful dying to the self, and then a joyous resurrection to Christ. And Penington describes it there. He says, to empty him of himself and make him weak in himself, and putting forth its own strength in and for man. Speaking of the strength that comes from God. And it's a far superior strength to what we have initially.
The quote keeps coming to mind, and I don't remember his name. He was a missionary to the Auca Indians. He is no fool who gives away what he cannot keep in order to gain what he cannot lose. And I've seen that apply in a number of places, but this answer is bringing that to mind. And the picture is to try to continually prop oneself up over and over and over, and then to release it. Maybe as they say, with claws on.
Is there more to say on this question and answer, or shall we move on to the next topic?
I don't have anything really to add to the reading, but I just want to say I really appreciate what friends have shared. Um, uh, Among other things, David talked about turning to God, turning to the Lord to protect us from ourselves. That really resonated with me. I often find myself saying that I need friends, lowercase friends, and the larger community of friends. The thing I need them for the most in my life is to protect me from myself. And I'm not sure I had fully considered turning to God with that same plea. Um, so I really appreciate that being brought to the foreground. And also uh, the Jean-Paul Sartre play that Patricia mentioned is a play I read way back in a French class in high school. And wow, that really is setting off tree lights in my head from all those years ago. Um, in a positive way. I'm cross-referencing that experience in a new way. So really appreciate that.
I am noting that with having had the advantage of having read this document again just recently in order to catch up with you all, that it strikes me that in reconciliation is really the one place in this document where it, and in this question and the one before it, where it speaks of something that the creature may do for itself. Justification, sanctification seem to be entirely or mostly from the grace of God. But in this case, to bring together the minds and hearts of God and man into one, it seems like the appropriate goal for which humans can strive. In this question, it says, what is man's great advantage? It's not saying it's not saying that you need to be poor or helpless, or that a poor, helpless, or a nothing person is going to be able to reconcile with God. It is indicating an attempt that the creature can actually make, an advantage that they can build or create for themselves in this process of reconciliation with God, to become weak, to become poor, to drive to become helpless, to become a nothing, or to become nothing. An interesting term in a Sartrean sense. But it is the process of maybe will is not the right word, but the process of making an effort on the part of the person that in this case allows something to start to happen, which is not just something that comes from grace or something one can allow happen to grace. I'm still not clear, and you probably have all discussed this before, but I see this as an interesting difference between reconciliation and perfection, sanctification, justification.
Thank you, everyone. Oh, John, you have your mic unmuted, and I was going to ask if you would read the next question.
I was going to just make a brief comment that I love the word the nothing ones because it's such a beautiful and I think perfect description of what I feel like when I stand before God. I can't make myself better. I can't make myself more worthy. I can only tell him, if I was your sin, your son, I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Please make me as one of your hired servants. And it's not as if I see him running down the street with the finest robe and the gold ring and prepared to kiss me on both cheeks, but I know that that's how it happened in Jesus's parable of the prodigal son, who came back feeling like a nothing one. And all I can do is marvel. This is what he asks. I can't even say that I'm good at humbling myself. I'm terrible at humbling myself. All I can do is put one foot in front of the other and say, here I am. As imperfectly surrendered as I am, I'm walking back to what was my home to ask that you accept me as one of your hired servants. And it feels so much better to be coming back as a nothing one than to be coming back with a portfolio full of worthless credentials. Anyway, I would now do what you asked, which is read question 1 concerning redemption. Question 1, what is redemption? Answer, it is the purchasing of the vessel out of the captivity and misery of death into the liberty and blessedness of the divine life, sown, revealed, grown up, and perfected in the heart.
I think the use of the word vessel is interesting because a vessel is something that is a container. It doesn't have anything in it, but its function and use is to contain something. And he's identifying the first birth as being simply a vessel, an empty, ideally an empty container for the spirit. So he's describing this vessel, and what's in it is the blessedness of divine life. And then he lists 4 stages from the smallest to the perfection of this divine life in the heart.
I'm reminded that through many periods of Christianity, the divine life, or rather redemption, was associated with, was the emphasis was on after death, that a true divine life would be available because of the work of the cross after we die, and that's still fairly common. And when you use words like sown, you're speaking of a natural process on this earth, a seed. And it reminds me that the early friends were so insistent on that this is here and now. And the only other comment I have on that is perfected in the heart makes me think of the gifts of the Spirit, that our hearts grow towards those qualities of kindness and gentleness, and so forth.
On that topic of our having died before we've physically died and embarked on eternal life, even while we're still walking around in physical bodies, I'm reminded of the strength and wisdom and guidance early friends and even modern friends, as modern as Hannah Whitall Smith, derived from that verse in Colossians: ye have died, and your life is hid with Christ in God.
Well, perhaps we can move on to who is the Redeemer. Would someone like to read that?
Question 2. Who is the Redeemer? Answer: the Son of God, the child of God's begetting, the divine image, who naturally believes and fulfills the will of the Father in every vessel, which it hath prepared.
I think that as for myself, and I suppose it's true of other people too, who have grown up in other traditions other than Quaker, the immediate assumption that comes to mind when I read the Son of God, I think immediately of Jesus. But I don't think that Penington is making that connection in this answer. I think he's referring to the Son of God that is within each of us, waiting to be born, or who has been born. And what led me to be aware of that was that final phrase in which he says, in every vessel which it hath prepared. So every vessel, I believe, refers to each person being a vessel of this divine image, of each person being having the possibility of coming into that state of being a child of God's begetting. Which goes back again to what Madeline was saying about the difference between traditions, other traditions than Quaker, thinking that this divine life is something that can only happen in heaven, which will occur after we pass from the earth, and how different that is from the Quaker understanding that this transformation, this divine life, is to happen while we are alive in this world. It's the only way that the scriptures can make sense, if it is understood to be an inward process.
Thank thee, Patricia. When I read that, my sense was the same, for it recalled to me the verses in the first chapter of John's Gospel. And in the King James Version, it talks about the sons of God, but in the New King James Version, it talks about the children of God, a bit more equity. And that's John, the first verses, so 11 to 13. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name. Which I feel is open to all of us.
So I like those verses. In King James, it's he came unto his own, and his own received him not. But to as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, who were born not of the flesh, nor of man, nor of the will of the flesh, but are born of God.
So in that case, our job from my point, or for my job, is really just to be ready to receive, to have a receptive heart.
And also to speak of it so that others will know that it's a possibility. Because this is so outlandish, really. I mean, I never would have suspected this possibility of God making himself known within my heart. And I think that that's typical of human beings. It's just not a real possibility until it happens. So woe unto us if we preach not the gospel. As Burrow said, Edward Burrow.
Well, our time is running out. I must say this leaves me with lots of questions, particularly the word kenosis, the self-emptying love, which I always attributed to Jesus. And now with these readings tonight and what's been said, just really having a question about kenotic love in myself and what it means to empty myself so that I can be that vessel. So thank you, friends. We'll have another session in a couple of weeks and address the end of this section, but we probably also need to be discussing where we will go after that. If people wish to continue in some form, what would that look like? So please, as you're led this week, these next couple of weeks, you may be thinking about where do we go next?
Do you think that we should have email discussions about that? Would that be better? Give us more time to ponder what others have said and respond to it rather than having a discussion?
Maybe both. We could initiate a discussion by email.
I would like that.